Committee of the Whole meeting, February 24th, 4:30 p.m. Call this meeting to order. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. If anybody has any now or during the meeting, please speak up. We have no delegations, so now we'll go to the Committee of the Whole reports, Administration, Employee Relations.
Are you turning it over to me?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair Stimson. We have an agreement from our voter list management service agreement. It's just an amending agreement, so I just kind of give you a little bit of an explanation. We do currently have a bylaw with them right now. It's just an address change and a couple wording changes, so it's just an amending agreement that I'll be bringing to council at this meeting. So if anyone has any questions, they can ask.
No questions? So we'll move on to council resolution supporting energy development and investment. Jason?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. So you have in your package a report to council, as well as a draft resolution and some further information from, I believe, the ISO. As we had discussed in the past, the importance of a council resolution supporting energy procurement, which is essential for the minister's, the ISO's LT2. So in discussion with the mayor, the ISO, Hydro One, OPG, we are proposing a resolution for council's discussion and able to answer any questions that you might have, hopefully. And then at a future council meeting, we would like to have it passed. Obviously, with the provincial election happening this Thursday, there's not a huge rush on this, but we would like to have this discussed and passed, hopefully, in March, so that we can forward it off to the appropriate ministries and other organizations. So happy to take any questions. And Mayor Ferguson, if you have any comments.
Yeah, I want to thank Jason for putting this together, and Councilor Knowles had some input into this as well. We appreciate that. And yeah, and through our dealings with, as Jason alluded to, the ISO, Minister of Energy, in different forms of government, it's important, if we want to be at the table for any energy projects, that we have a resolution saying we are willing. This is basically says we're willing to listen. It doesn't say we're good to go with anything. Anything that comes to us, of course, would come to council. There would be public consultation on any projects going forward. And so it's not, you know, a blank check for anybody to come in and do anything. Developers are looking. This is the first step. The province, the Minister of Energy, has gone on to say many times that we will not put energy projects in communities that don't want them. So this puts us on the map for a community that's willing to listen, not necessarily green light anything, but we are willing to listen to anything. And I just like to remind everybody that with construction that started, I think, around 1980 for Ontario Power Generation, we've reaped the benefits of that generating station for the last 45 years. So we'd like to keep that going. That's first and foremost. But anything else, as it says here, the province needs identified 75% increase in energy by 2050. So there's opportunities without hindering the operation of Ontario Power Generation in Atikokan. And this just says that we are basically willing to listen to anybody that wants to speak with the community.
Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Chair Stim. So would you recommend that if anybody does have a particular project in mind, to come and make a speech to the council?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Councillor Johnson. That would be the first step, that they would identify a project and speak with us if we have property, they would do their due diligence. But before anything was agreed upon, they would come, they would do a delegation to council, talk about what's in it going forward, I wouldn't say there's a community benefit agreement that would need to be reached if somebody was to look at doing an energy project in Atikokan. That would be the first step before we agree to anything, that there would make sure that it's safe, make sure that the community wants it, and make sure that there's a community benefit agreement for the town that's undertaking this project.
Lyons?
Thank you. I guess that my question is, with this resolution, I know this is talking particularly about potential new energy projects, but would it have any leverage in extending our support for the longevity of the existing OPG generating station?
Yeah, 100%, Councillor Lyons. It's in the resolution. We realize that keeping the Atikokan generating station going is first and foremost. We need to do that. We need to cooperate with the province. We've been discussing with the province about a longer-term deal, because 5 years at a time doesn't give Ontario Power Generation and the IESO comfort in doing any investments in it. So a longer-term deal with maybe more generation capabilities would justify any work that has to go into the generating station. It would help the people at Biopower plan if they went to the bank and wanted to do something and they had a contract for 50% of their production for the next 10 years. It leverages their opportunity for investment. So it's definitely, that's first, as I say, that's first and foremost, is keeping the Atikokan generating station going, and then looking at anything else that can benefit the province and the community as well.
Councillor Shine?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. So with this project here, do they have to fall under the guidelines of the IESO, or can it be like, say, an Indigenous community decided they wanted to develop something, and would they still have to come to us?
Yeah, definitely. It's our property. It's we own the town of Atikokan.
Right.
So anybody that wants to do business here, working with Indigenous communities is a good way to leverage opportunities, for sure. But if you're going to do an energy project, you have to have a power purchase agreement with the IESO. So
Okay.
if you don't have the IESO's blessing, the project doesn't go forward.
I have one question. I kept hearing saying if the town wants it, how are you planning on finding out whether the town's people want it, or is it just going to be the councillors decide that?
There would be public consultation. They would come in, much like they did with Hydro One. They had public consultation, they had the discussion, but the final decision, as I see it, would be with council.
Okay.
We would get feedback from the town, they would have public consultations.
Okay.
There's nothing that really, we're not gonna do anything that's a danger to the community. It's an opportunity to, maybe there was some generation, maybe there's some battery storage, who knows what the opportunities are. But yeah, there would definitely be, that's part of it, is public consultation. But as I see it, that we are the elected council, and we would have the say on how it goes.
You can never please all the people all the time, so.
Yeah, I don't think would be a Facebook poll or anything like that. It would be They would come to council, do a delegation, they would have some community engagement and community benefit agreements, and then it would be up to council to make that final decision.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, CAO Young.
Just a further comment. Like the ministry and the ISO has clearly stated, they will not even entertain any sort of proposals without a resolution from council. This resolution lets those developers know that we are interested in hearing from them. There would still be a further resolution, I believe, on that specific project, but this is sort of like kind of the first step. Normally, our resolutions aren't as they're not normally this long. The reports to councils aren't as detailed, but we feel because these are going to be sent out to the ministries and the ISO that we wanted to kind of capture everything.
Through the chair, I'd just like to say one last thing, a couple of things. I'd just like to commend Jason for putting this together and Councillor Knowles for vetting it out and giving his feedback. And it is very important for us to be out there. And when they announced that the Waasigan power line was coming through Atikokan, that brought a lot of attention to Atikokan, because previously to that, with the existing hydro transmission lines, there would have been no way to get more power out of Atikokan. So you couldn't build another facility for more generation because there is no way to transmit it. So with the Waasigan coming in, it's 350 megawatts of power that we can get out of northwestern Ontario, and that really opened the eyes to a lot of developers to take a second look at, or another look, or a first look at the town of Atikokan.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the Hydro One Community Benefit Fund.
Oh, I guess just to wrap it up. So if council has any comments to the resolution, if we can get them as soon as possible, and then we will bring this forward on a future council agenda to ask for it to be passed.
Okay, I jumped the gun a bit there. Okay, so now we'll go to the Hydro One Community Benefit Fund.
Sure. So very exciting news. We're very happy to be able to bring this forward to everyone. You have my report, and I'll have Mayor Ferguson speak to it as well.
Okay, thank you, Jason. I've been working on the Waasigan roundtable for, I thought it was 6 years. I heard it was 8 years, but somewhere in there. It's been a long haul, and just keeping Atikokan on the map and making sure that we were going to benefit from this operation going through our town, and dealing with our community relations person at Hydro One. They've been really good, and Jason can confirm that when we started out, we originally were starting out and looking at around the $50,000 mark on this. And through constant, considerable discussions of petitioning, and the person went to bat for us, and they were able to get this $250,000 from Hydro One. There is some stipulations on it. It's basically ours to spend. As Jason alludes, it has to be spent by the end of the project, which is 2028. Right now, it looks like at the end of 2028. It has to be something, Hydro One wants things that are a lasting benefit to the community. They want something that's going to be around for a long time. So when we talk to them about community barbecue, sponsoring something like that, that was not what they were looking for. They were looking for facilities, they were looking for improvements to the town, things for the community at large that would benefit for the entire community and for years going forward. So the $250,000 is Hydro One share. I think with the proper work going forward, and as Jason alluded to here, that we can use this as our portion. There's a lot of grants that are not available that are, 50% government, 50% town, 30, 30, 30, things like that. I'm confident that we could, with the proper work and the projects, we could another $250,000 from different forms of government. So not just taking this money and spending it, doing it thoughtfully, identifying the correct projects, what we can do to leverage provincial, federal funds, and we can make this go a lot longer, a lot farther than we want or we think. And I think that's going to be some huge benefits. A lot of it's, I wouldn't say it's fun projects, but it's a lot of things. We have infrastructure issues. We have a lot of things that we need to do, and a lot of times we can't afford to do some of the nice things that we can do for the town of Atikokan and the people of Atikokan. I think this is an opportunity to do some of those things moving forward. One other thing they talked about they would like to see, it's not a must do, but they would like to see some kind of energy savings, energy project as well to fit in with Hydro One. Whether it's, say a solar project or something where it fits in with the energy function of Hydro One. So there's opportunities for us here if we leverage this properly. I've talked to them about some of the projects that I've thought about that people brought to me about, and there was a yes on these projects that I brought forward to them. So I think we've got great opportunities to benefit the town of Atikokan and the people of Atikokan if we use this money properly, and I think it's really appreciated by our friends at Hydro One, and I don't know if anybody's got any other comments.
Councillor Shine?
Thank you, Chair Stimpson. My question is this: would the need or request to move forward with some kind of washroom facilities uptown, could that fall underneath this as one of the potential projects of turning it into a viable green space, maybe perhaps incorporating a new tourist bureau so people are actually coming in town rather than having to just go to the highway and then drive on?
Definitely, that was one of the projects that I've discussed with Hydro One, and that fit in with their vision. And that is one project where there is potential for a big portion of that to be covered by the province.
Thank you, Chair Stem. I see in the notes here that you're going to set up an ad hoc committee, and I would be very pleased to sit on that if council so wishes.
Councillor, ladies first, I guess. Councillor Lyons.
Thank you. Yes, as it is mentioned here about the ad hoc committee, that is something too that I would be happy to participate in as well, should the opportunity arise.
Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Chair Simpson. I guess I will also throw my hat in the ring. Happy to bring some economic development background to it. Thank you.
Councillor Shine.
I'll put my name forward too.
What my name for? And CEO Young.
So,
Oh. Go ahead.
no,
Yeah, you go ahead. I just noticed someone told me Gord's got his hand up, so I'll get him after.
yeah, so I mean, it's a great news story. We're very happy with Hydro One acknowledging the Waskin project and the benefit that it brings to our communities. And as we had mentioned earlier, there is a smaller community fund that user groups are more than welcome to apply for. This particular fund is specific to the municipality, as the mayor has mentioned. Our only thought behind the ad hoc was to have 7 people, right now decide on a project would be tough, right? And we want to make sure that we don't want to, a knee-jerk reaction of something that's maybe right now that they want to do. As the mayor mentioned, there's opportunities to leverage bigger pots of money using this money. It's doesn't have to be spent immediately, right? There is the opportunity to hang on or use parts of this between now and when the project is over. The only reason I recommended an ad hoc committee was, I think right now to have 7 people decide on where this money should go would be a challenge, and I don't think that it has to happen immediately with all 7 people. So that was the only recommendation for the ad hoc, was to be able to kind of go offline, have a conversation, and bring forward recommendations to council as a whole. Ultimately, it is council as a whole's decision where this money should be spent. We're just trying to streamline the discussion to before it's kind of earmarked for something specific. Okay.
CEO Young. Councillor Knowles, Gordon, Councillor Martin, Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chair Stimson. Yeah, well, I was gonna throw my hat in the ring too, seeing as everybody else did, but it sounds like you got a lot of people there, and I think it's awesome that Hydro One's doing this, and let's spend the money wisely. Thank you.
Councillor Shine.
Thank you, Chair Stimson. I think it's just important, whether we have the haddock committee or not, is that the rest of the council is being kept informed as to what projects you're even looking at before. You know, let's have a little bit of transparency about what's going on with what projects you're looking at, so we can have a little bit of input into it, rather than picking
I'll
one or two.
speak to that, absolutely. And that was the whole point, that there will be no money spent without the approval of council as a whole. The ad hoc committee was only to try and streamline that conversation down, so that any recommendations brought forward to council, you know, versus just this open discussion, right? Just trying to narrow it down. So that's the only mandate of the ad hoc committee, right? It still would be all of council's decision, absolutely.
If we had the ad hoc committee of 2 people, would other councillors be able to give them a little idea if they?
Yeah, absolutely, right? So our thought is to have the mayor and 2 councillors meet offside, but everyone absolutely has an opportunity to bring forward what they'd like to see. It would just be, let's say, the ad hoc committee having that conversation, and then bringing forward like a recommendation. But yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, Chair Stem. Jason, did I hear you correctly to say that there is another fund that organizations in town can apply for and maybe get some monies?
Yeah, so there's a regional fund. So there's a couple different funds. So Hydro One is reaching out to Shunya, Atikokan, and Dryden regarding the Municipal Community Benefit Fund. They also have a fund. They've established a fund for the entire region. So not just Atikokan, Shunya, Dryden, Atikokan. Nonprofit groups can apply to that fund, and it can be as $500, $1,000. I don't think that they really have a cap on those requests. We are, and I think we'd mentioned this at a previous meeting, we are encouraging our local groups to reach out to Hydro One, because we want to try and keep as much of that money in Atikokan as possible. But that's there as well. Yeah.
And one more question, if I may. Jason, who would these groups get hold of to start the application?
So the application form is out there, I believe, from our local Hydro One rep. So we can direct people to her directly, or the form.
Okay, thank you.
We could forward it's a 1-pager. It's pretty easy to navigate the system. And one of the things with this fund is it can't be like the arena can't apply for this smaller fund. It can't be anything with the municipality. There'd be something where it may be, say, the Legion or the Lions Club or the Pictograph Gallery. People like that, organizations like that would be able to do this, but it can't be the municipality applying for this smaller fund.
So you're saying the library couldn't apply to get some new lighting?
Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but that didn't really fly.
Yeah, it is the town's building, so it has to be separate and distinct from.
We tried.
One of the things the ad hoc committee gets.
Could be part of the large municipal fund, but not the community fund.
Councillor Martin?
Thank you. So what I was going to suggest was maybe like you're looking for 2 people to sit on that ad hoc, and whoever those 2 people are, that's fine. maybe the rest of the counselors could make a wish list, a top six wish list, and they could present it to the ad hoc, and maybe they could review those and in addition to their own, and you can put a top 10 wish list together or whatever you want to do. So, yeah, that's just my thoughts on that for the hydro grant or fund.
Did you have your hand up? Oh, thank you. Any other questions then?
Yes, we are going to have to try and figure out then who will sit on this ad hoc. And since everybody wants to, I mean, it's direction of council. I mean, if council doesn't want to have an ad hoc and they want it to be everyone, then it's a meeting and it's an open discussion. If, as Councillor Martin said, if councillors want to provide a list of recommended projects to the ad hoc, that's great as well. I think the key is that there's no rush. There's a lot of time on this. But we are looking for direction on how to move forward on the members of the ad hoc, if that's what council wants to do.
Looking for that right
I am looking for that right now. Unless council just wants to sit on it. I mean, if you need time with this, we don't have to move forward right now. I mean, we can figure out at a future committee of the whole, if we do want an ad hoc committee and who will sit on that. It is absolutely up to you guys.
Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. I'm going to put the mayor in a spot. I would like to see him pick the two ad hoc members.
Can I have some time on that, Counselor?
Oh, absolutely.
Right now?
Oh, absolutely.
I would be good with that. If people are okay with that, if you want to do a hat draw, if you want to have a vote amongst yourselves, I don't know. I just know that, like I said before, Jason and I have been working with Hydro One on this, and we know the rules and the guide rails that we have to stay in. And that is the proper term, guide rails. It's not guardrails. It's guide rails that we have to stay in. And so, yeah, however you guys want to decide. If you want to leave it to me, you can leave it to me. If you want to, I don't know, hat draw, you want to vote somebody.
I think it should be up to you how to do it, and everybody just don't take it personal.
I would like to see all the councillors involved in this.
No.
We've sat around the table here before and gave suggestions, and we've limited, cut things out, and it happens every time we sit around and talk about budgets and stuff like that. I think I don't think that anybody would get upset if their pet project got thrown to the curb, but I just think that we're all elected officials. Well, I'm not. I got moved up, but I just think that everybody should be involved in looking after the town's money. That's just my opinion. Oh, CAO Young.
So the purpose of an ad hoc committee is to be able to have free conversation regarding different aspects, and then bring forward recommendations to council. If all 7 of you want to figure this out, then it's basically a committee of the whole meeting, and it's a discussion while the cameras are rolling, and it's part of an agenda. I will again confirm that council as a whole will make the ultimate decision, and that discussion will be in an open session of council. The only purpose of an ad hoc committee is just to allow free discussion prior to having those recommendations come forward to council. Again, we don't have to have an ad hoc committee. It is ultimately council's decision, but just understand that if it's all 7 of you guys, it is part of a televised open committee of the whole meeting.
Yeah, I just was saying that because I wouldn't, if I gave one of the guys a little suggestion, I'd like to see what people said about it, like if it gets tossed to the curb, and they have good reason, then that's fine. But I feel if I'm just going to use anybody name, Okay, you got your hand up, so Councillor Lyons, if you would have come to the ad hoc committee and said, here's something that I was asked about, and that was the last you heard of it, you kind of would like to know the reasons why. It's not that you're going to be upset about it, it's just, if you think that, or you've been approached by something that with an idea, you'd kind of like to follow through with it, and that's just what I'm looking at. But anyways, I'll Councillor Lyons, and then I'll go to Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair Simpson. I would have to say I agree with the proposal set forth from CAO Young. I think the role of the ad hoc committee would be much more beneficial in order to flush out some of those details that are required for the various proposals, but that's not to say that the rest of council couldn't bring forth the proposals and the ad hoc committee provide that rationale should any sort of projects be discounted from the proposal itself. And, you know, having that fruitful conversation can definitely be of benefit to basically providing the best options going forward.
Councillor Martin?
I'm going to agree with Councillor Lyons. I think, you know, we can all have some input, but let's let the ad hoc committee have, you know, open discussions, figure out, have a look at the list, and then they can bring it to council, and I'm okay with that. And if Mayor Ferguson wants to pick those two people, that's fine too. So just, you know, worried that maybe too many cooks in the kitchen might spoil the meal kind of thing. So that's a terrible analogy, but that's all I could come up with. Sorry.
Councillor Shine?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. I was going to say, perhaps it's time to let some of our younger ones who work within the government as well, which is Councillor Lyons and Councillor Gord here, who have worked within the structures of the government. Maybe it might be time to let them take on a new role since they're new to the thing. That's just my thought.
Seems like a good thought, to me anyways, but yes.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Shine, on that. I'd just like to say my one last thing on this too is when we identify projects, we should look at projects that can get matching funding or a large part of the funding, and use our money, our 250, as leverage to get more money. So I think in kind of getting ahead of myself maybe a little bit here, but we should look at something where we can leverage, not spend all our money on a couple projects, but spend our money on projects where we can leverage more money from the province or the federal government too. So that's something that we have to take into account, either as well as if a federal or a provincial entity is going to pony up 50% of the issue, and we got to put in 50,000 and they put in 50,000, I think that's better than picking something that costs $100,000, but we're totally on the hook for it all ourselves. So, but again, getting ahead of ourselves on this, so.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Councillor Shine's idea there. We got a new councillor who's just getting her feet wet, and I think it would be good for her to jump in there. And then you got Councillor Knowles, who's dealt with all kinds of cash and stuff, and seems to have a pretty good idea what's going on, but that's just my opinion. Councillor Shine?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. We also got to remember there's a federal election coming up, you know, too, in the next year or so. And when we were at our meetings, as the mayor can attest to, some of the grants that are going to be coming out are getting kind of revamped. So we don't want to go and pick something now, whereas we regret it, and then we haven't been able to tap into some of those extra funds that are going to come out after both elections.
Right. Any other comments? Or we really decided anything, CEO Young? How we're going to do it?
I mean, from what it sounds like, the majority want is the mayor to reach out so we can send out an email, or the mayor can send out an email proposing two councillors if all of council's on board with that. then, I mean, we'll form the ad hoc?
Vote on it.
Or are we going with the two right now? If I'm getting a nod or the majority of council, then we'll have Councillor Knowles and Councillor Lyons work with Councillor Ferguson, or Mayor Ferguson, to bring forward recommendations, and we would encourage all of council to bring forth their ideas on that, and we'll continue the conversation if that's what I'm reading.
Thank you, CAO Young. Councillor Martin? Got eyes in the back.
Oh, I was just doing the A-OK. I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on to finance. Treasurer Randy?
Okay, so as this is the first budget meeting, I don't have all the information I need yet, and I don't have all the budgets yet, and the budgets I do have haven't been vetted, so this is very high level, loosey-goosey. What I usually am looking for at this meeting is just to get some discussion going so I can get a feel for where council's at and what they do and don't want to see. So the first document you have is our estimated starting reserves. Now, this caused some confusion last year, so just to clarify, if you look at the fourth line, Culvert Industrial Mall, all of those totals are, they total the working capital line. So that working capital of the 305 consists of all that breakdown on top of it, and same goes for the other ones that. So in total, we have 4.478. Some of this was put into reserves at the end of the year for unfinished projects, and some of it has just been sitting there, or we've been putting money in to try and get reserves for specific projects to where we need them to be. So are there any questions about reserves?
Councillor Knowles?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. I don't know why that's so difficult. Grant, where are we with the reserves as far as having the funds necessary to purchase the fire truck? I see here that it's at 550, and I know that an amount has been getting put in every year in order to facilitate that purchase. Are we almost at that point now where we could make the purchase of that fire truck and get things caught up?
Thanks. Yeah, I have been reaching out to a number of manufacturers. Unfortunately, it takes 2 years to get a fire truck. So 18 months to 2 years, there's a number of trucks that are made non-spec that they're just built. And I've been reaching out to those companies, and yeah, I have drawings on my desk right now. So we are very close.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Shine?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. An interesting question came up about this when we were at our meetings in Toronto, and one of the mayors there brought up a thing where all the fire trucks are serviced on a regular basis. You have to have a list of what you get done, right? Correct, if I'm not mistaken? And what his concern was is if these are passing the inspections, the safeties and things like that, is he wanted to know why municipalities are being forced to buy these $1 million fire trucks if they're still viable uses of equipment. And he was told it had something to do with the insurance companies. Is this true? Is this why we have to purchase a new fire truck? Because the life expectancy is gone?
No, NFPA rather dictates that a fire truck in a municipality such as Atikokan, it's got to be replaced every 25 years without question. There is no room to carry it on past that. If you're a high service area with multiple calls a day, say Thunder Bay as an example, it has a life expectancy of 20 years. And the reference to the insurance company is not really the insurance company. It's Underwriters Canada that we report to every 5 years of what equipment we have on hand. Once that information, or once the fire truck is beyond, in our case, say 25 years, that becomes reportable to underwriters, and then that information is accessible by the insurance companies, because they can see now what ability we have or what equipment we have, and are we current. So that's really puts it together. It's not the insurance companies. Underwriters are the people who rate us, and then the insurance companies have access to that rating.
Fire Chief Warburton, I have a question. When we get a new fire truck and we have one that's, we can't trade it in. Like, it's not like you go and buy a new Half and you trade your old one in. What happens to that? Do we sell it as a surplus, or can you sell them after they've had their 25 years? Because after 25 years, a fire truck here looks like it might be in pretty good shape still to be used somewhere.
You can sell them. I mean, not forgetting that if you were driving a car or a vehicle of your own that was 25 years old, that dates back quite a while. I don't know, I mean, there are people in town drive units older than 25 years. We've got a 1982 in service that works fine, but it doesn't give us any rating. So you can keep them and operate them as a backup vehicle or as an assistant vehicle, but it doesn't assist to the underwriter's rating for the community. So you could sell it for a nominal fee to a community that is just looking for a backup unit, or keep it. That's really.
What have we done in the past? Sell it cheap to
Well, the
someone?
1982, I'll give you an idea. We've kept that one a long time. I mean, it's the very old ones. They've just become archaic. They've sold for nothing. You know, they're not worth anything.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shine?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. So my question is to Brandy. So with these reserves, when will we start looking at the budget itself so that we know how much more money we need to get, say, because obviously the $500,000 for the new fire truck, when are we going to know how much more money we need towards that?
Once I get all the budgets.
And when are you estimating that's going to be? Because we're already March 1st.
Soon, I would hope. I just received a couple last week, so I'm expecting the last of them.
Okay, thank you.
anytime.
Any other questions on that? Okay, Brandy.
Okay, so the next document is where we're at for debt in 2025. And you'll notice the Main Street debt will finally be paid off. So that'll be nice. That one was kind of a thorn in my side because it was our highest payment and our highest interest rate, but it was locked in. There was no paying it off early and saving any interest. There was no value to that, so we've just left it. Any questions about the debt?
Councillor Johnson?
Excuse me for my ignorance when it comes to finances, Brandy, but if we've paid off the Main Street, could we apply those payments now to the Willow Street debt?
We could, but we are in our asset management plan. We've it's been recommended to apply any outstanding debt payments, like once they're paid off, to go towards new capital because of our infrastructure deficit. So that's what we've been doing.
Councillor Martin?
Thank you. Yeah, excuse my ignorance here. So, this Willow Road 1.49, what was that for?
For Willow Road. I mean, it was years ago, but that's
Okay,
that's
so
when
that
Willow
was,
Road was done.
okay, oh, right, okay, on the.
So
yeah, okay,
2016 was
gotcha.
when it was done.
Okay, wellness center, that was for when you refurbished the pool, arena?
Yes, that was also 2016. We did those two together.
Okay, okay, alrighty. And those are on a 15-year term?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, I guess that's it. I was a little bit confused about the first page, Brandy. Um, and I was kind of hoping maybe you would went line by line on that just to clarify some stuff, but if everybody else understands it, that's fine. Thank you.
Counselor Knowles?
Thank you, Chair Simpson. Brandy, do you have any sense of what the current interest rate would be if the town was to take on any new capital projects?
No, I haven't looked. We do get decent rates from Infrastructure Ontario, but I haven't.
Okay, yeah, I only asked because, yeah, the last project on here is 2021, and that's kind of before the rates started to go up. So just a question of, I guess, if we're looking at anything as far as the budget goes for this next year coming up, I would like to have that information just for factoring that in. Thanks.
Counselor Shine?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. I don't see anything in here about the O'Brien Street debt. Is it too soon to know what the debt is going to be for that? Is that why it's not on there?
We didn't get debentures for O'Brien.
Okay.
So just to clarify a little bit, I'm really good at confusing people, and every year I try to do less and less, but just to give a quick overview. So Main Street will be paid this year. Willow Road, we will have $650,000 left. Rec Wellness Center, we will have $500,000 left at the end of the year. And the sewage pump station project will have $1.2 million left at the end of the year. And our payments for this year will be $833,000, almost $834,000.
CEO Young?
Just go back to Councillor Martin's comments regarding reserves. As this is just the first initial discussion regarding the budget, I would encourage you to reach out to Brandy. She'd be happy to go through line by line for you. We want to make sure that council is fully educated on these numbers before we ask them to make a decision. So lots of time, and please ask those questions.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions about debt? Okay, we'll move on to my little chicken scratch sheet then. Okay, so again, like I said, this meeting is basically just to get a feel for council, what they do and don't want, a reminder of what our priorities have been in the past. So the first thing you generally look at when doing a budget is your strategic plan. So this is the old strategic plan, but it's basically the same as the current strategic plan that we're working on. So the areas identified there to prioritize our economic development, infrastructure, municipal effectiveness and efficiency, and positive lifestyle opportunities. But the one missing component is the housing, which is going to be in the new strategic plan. So those are generally the priorities you want to find in your budget. Service levels. Generally, we are always looking to keep the same service levels. So if there is any change in that, thought process, then you'll need to let us know. Reserves, we don't want to deplete our reserves. We're down a couple million from our normal average. However, we have extremely large projects on the go. So generally, I don't like to use reserves unless we absolutely have to. Our debt, we don't want to borrow at this time. ideally we'll be able to manage as is, because we may need to borrow next year. So our recommendations from the asset management plan are, and keep in mind, this is just capital recommendations. So in order to address our infrastructure deficit, our asset management plan recommends a 0.7% tax increase for the next 10 years, a 1.8 water increase for the next 20 years, 1.4 increase for 20 years for waste management, and again, that's annually just for capital. That doesn't include any inflation, operational increases, anything like that. And then in addition to that, like I said, reallocate all of our debt costs reductions, so the one we pay off this year, reallocate it to infrastructure. Inflation increase for existing and future capital budgets, and commit all of our OCIF, gas tax, and now we have the NORDS funding, all to infrastructure. Now this next little chart is, I usually confuse everybody again, so I've tried to modify it a little bit again, hoping that it'll make a little more sense. So these are some of our uncontrollable costs and things that the changes that are either good or bad that we really can't control. So first is the long-term debt payment. So it will be, we'll have a savings of $9,000 there. Our OOMP funding, we actually have an increase in it of $4,500. DSAB, I don't have the final numbers yet, but we're looking at about an extra $52,577 this year, but that also includes the supplemental, which we generally don't have to pay, but we do have to pay it if need be. It's just we haven't had to pay it for years, so I generally budget for it anyway, because if it happens, we have to pay it. Our OPP contract, with the changes, results in a $9,582 increase. Our water and sewer plant operations, an increase of approximately $215,000. Health unit increase, $25,000. Insurance decrease of around $50,000. Our MPAC levy only $1,225. And an increase in our water and sewer revenue of $55,866. So that end results in an extra cost for this budget before we even begin of $183,837. So last year's levied roll versus the returned roll resulted in an increase of $23,926, which is a 0.27 tax decrease. So before we even start the budget, there's a little bit of a decrease in the notional rate. In 2024, a 1% levy increase worked out to be $85,079, with a notional rate increase of 1.24%. I haven't done the calcs for this year yet, but it's going to be quite similar. So any levy increase, if you do a 1% levy increase, you're going to get around $85,000.
Excuse me, through the chair, Brandy, what's notional rate? I don't know what that is.
So I have trouble explaining these things. So let's say your taxes were $100. So our what we needed to raise from taxes last year were $100. Throughout the year, there's changes. People's garages burn down, people build new buildings, there's changes. So then you get your returned roll. So if we get the returned roll and it says now our taxes are $150, our starting rate for our taxes is now less than last year's tax rate. Because in order to obtain the same amount of money, we can reduce our tax rate to get the same levy we had last year. Because last year we only needed 100. Am I making any sense?
Thank you.
Councillor Shine?
Thank you, Chair Stimpson. My question, I think probably go, I don't know if it will go to Brandy or to Jason. So in regards to our strategic plan, they were looking at our service levels as well. Am I not mistaken? So how do we know about that if we, like, when are we going to hear something in regards to our strategic plan and our asset management plan for the new ones? Because shouldn't we be basing it on that?
Well, I mean, it's a timing thing, right? So, I mean, we certainly want to have this year's budget passed as soon as possible. As part of the project with KPMG, they have till June to bring forth a recommended strat plan, and in there is a service delivery review. So, I mean, sure, in a perfect world, we would want that all finished before we made decisions regarding the 2025 budget. But unfortunately, and I can get to this later on, though, that's if there's money left over, right, from the fixed costs from the projects that are already started that we have to finish. You know, those discussions are going to happen regardless. But the project is kind of a moving forward sort of recommendation. But yes, to answer your question, yes, there will be recommendations in there regarding levels of service. But that's not based on the tax rate. That's based on what we can afford, what we want to see for the community moving forward. That makes sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Lyons?
Thank you, Chair Stimpson. Question for Brandy. I'm just looking here at your notes regarding the commit all OCIF and gas tax to infrastructure. What sort of impact could that possibly have on transit services?
Well, right now, we've basically been using all that money for our current projects. So, but the provincial gas tax, you're eligible to spend that on operations. So now we don't want to do that. My recommendation is to keep all handy van reserve and provincial gas tax to replace the capital handy vans, but it is an option to use that money if we have to. But to me, that would be a last resort. My recommendation would be for council to budget for the transit costs if we can.
Thank you, Brandy.
Okay, and just another comment as to service levels too. Council has the option to decrease service levels or increase any service levels you want, like through the budget process. Okay, now these are rough and dirty numbers. Again, they haven't all been vetted, but the library levy looks like it will be, it's sitting around $366,000, which is a 2.8% increase from last year. The museum levy is looking to be about $160,000, which is like a 40% decrease. Now, the reason for that is this is including capital, and last year we also had extra staffing and retirements. So it's the 160 is more back to our normal annual budget for the museum. Last year was extraordinarily large. The cemetery is looking at about $27,000 levy, and that's about a 60% decrease because of the columbarium capital costs. So this, again, is also going back to normal levels. Now,
I just want to know why we 366, 2.8% increase in library levy. I don't understand that. Where that arbitrary number came from?
from their budget.
From their,
So
this year's budget?
From their preliminary, what was presented, yes.
Okay, that's their ask.
Yes, yeah.
Thanks.
So the big difference is, I believe, oh, I don't have it in here. There was some capital work in there that was making the majority of the difference.
Would you be talking about capital work that's already been done or capital work that they want to do?
Capital work they want to do.
Well, you just got to remember that the library is a lot more than just a bookstore. They do a heck of a lot of stuff there.
And once I go through the budgets, any capital work, like I will identify. And I will also identify any significant changes when it comes to even operations. If there's something significantly different than a prior year, I usually make note of it, just to. Okay, so then down here, I've just kind of listed some of the projects that we expect to happen this year. So the Pioneer Center windows and doors, that's $10,125. That's our cost. The total cost of the project, I believe, is $40,000 and change. Transportation operations, so again, this is new. This is the average cost for our current transportation program. So I believe that's under review to see whether or not we want to continue as is or any changes. So that will come to council. The pay equity plan still is incomplete. The asset management plan, the 2025 portion of the plan is $16,000. The 2024 was budgeted last year. Pool deck, $65,000. Fairway mower, $25,000 into reserves. Handy van garage, $50,000. These ones I don't have numbers for yet, but just to let council know, our IT services, we need to get a new service provider. We also need to change our hardware and software and our phone system. So when it comes to our operational IT services, we're gonna have a major, major jump in costs. I believe when we tendered it, like 10 years ago, the next highest proposal was like 3 times higher than our current provider, and the other one was like 5 times higher. So there's going to be a significant jump there. Our strategic plan and service delivery review, some of it was done last year. I don't have the number for what we're going to need for this year. Both of our contracts with employees are overdue, so if we were to ratify the agreements this year, it would be two years worth of increases. The fire truck, demolitions, Mud Lake Dam, Mackenzie Bridge, Pine Crescent Storm Sewer, which is about half done. ISIP Rural resurfacing, ISIP Green, O'Brien Water Main, and the Mercury Culvert. So again, that's very high level. And just looking for any changes from the norm that council is looking at.
Do we not put any money for IT services and hardware and software in reserves at all?
I put money in for capital, not for services. That's operational.
Okay. And I guess all this has to be changed at one time, not, you can't do a bit 1 year, like you can't do, like I'm not into computers that much, so I guess when it comes time to revamp your IT, you have to do it all?
We could do the phone system at a separate time, but to get our system where we want them to be, we would have to do it
No, okay.
all at once. At least the server end of it and cloud storage and that sort of thing.
Okay, Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Chair Stim. This question is for Tyler. Tyler, the Mud Lake Dam keeps getting put off. And as it gets put off, it's costing the township more money for their part. Is that correct?
Unknown. It has been tendered, so we are unknown if it's going to cost more. Hopefully we get it done this season, and it doesn't.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry. Councillor Shine?
Chair Stimson. Randy, will we be having another meeting once you get the rest of the budgets gone through them, even if it has to be separate from any of our other meetings coming up? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. Just on the Mud Lake thing for Tyler, I thought that there was a contractor that was doing the Mud Lake. Are you saying it's been retendered now?
Nope, that's what I'm saying is we have a tender completed for a contractor to do the work. Unfortunately, the ministry is not moving on any of their budget or their permitting approvals here right now.
Okay, second part of the question, if I wanted to get fireworks for the town in the budget, when do I do that?
Well, right now, if you have any numbers for me, otherwise you can email me or request and I can put it in.
$5,000. And then we'll get some local businesses to match that number.
Okay, I will put it in the preliminary.
CEO Young?
Thank you.
Sure. So I think it's important to remember when we think of the budgets and we think of, the last 5 or 6 years, I mean, we've been in a situation where, there was never enough money and all of our money was going into the implementation of the director's order with the sewer lawsuit. And we spent a lot of money over a lot of years to get that done, and we're really happy to have that behind us. This year, it's important that we remember we are going to have to finish the projects that we started last year, and then get that done as well as the paving. So I think it's important to know that we're close to getting to a point where we start looking at new projects and where that money is going to be going to, and we're excited to get to that point. We're not quite there yet, so hopefully this budget will go well and go smooth, and then we can look to brighter days.
Mayor Ferguson?
Through the chair, Brandy, you say you don't want to touch reserves, but we put money aside in 2024 for projects. And we don't get the projects done, so we put the money into reserves. And then we say, well, we got to raise taxes this year to pay for these projects that are going to come up. But we've already taxed the local residents for these projects that we didn't complete in 2024, put it in reserves for this year, not to be there in perpetuity. So I think going by what you have on some of these papers here is some of the money that we've already put aside from last year. Is that correct?
Yeah, so any of the December money that we put into reserves for the unfinished projects comes out of reserves in the budget process.
Okay, because I see golf equipment, 31,000, and then I see where we're gonna have to come up with money to buy a fairway mower for 25,000. So when I look at that, I see a 6,000 to the good.
No, that's money put into reserves every year to eventually be able to purchase a fairway mower.
Okay.
So that 25 is an addition to the 31 in
So
order.
we're gonna spend $56,000 on equipment at the golf course? Is that the request?
No, this is putting money into reserves so that eventually we'll have enough money to purchase a Fairway
Right,
more.
so that's where that money for reserves comes, to takes care of what we want.
Yeah, but we don't
I
have
don't know,
enough.
maybe I'm missing something, maybe I don't understand, but when you put money away every year for a project, for a piece of equipment, and then we buy that piece of equipment, we take the money out of reserves for
We're
it.
not buying the piece of equipment, we're saving for it. So we're putting it into reserves to save, so that at some point we'll be able to have enough money to buy a Fairway more.
So where's the $25,000 on this piece of paper going to go?
Into reserves.
So we're gonna have $56,000 in reserves.
Yes. If it doesn't get cut. Yes.
Okay.
How much is a Fairway mower? Huh? Yikes. Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, okay. I'm not sure, oh, yeah. Okay. All right. I'm not sure who had their hand up first. I'll go by seniority. Councillor Shine?
Thank you for that comment. Thank you, Chair Stimson. I think what we're trying to understand here is maybe when you're saying you're putting, we have to purchase your lawnmower. Is the final cost going to be $200,000, and right now we only have $50,000 saved up, and every year we have to put in another $25,000, just like we're doing for our fire truck? Maybe we need to have a clearer understanding of what the actual cost of the equipment is to understand why we're putting money away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that, and there's several accounts in our reserves that are basically savings accounts for later. They're not. But for the unfinished projects, the resolution that we did in December, that generally comes out immediately out in the budget process in order to pay for those projects that were unfinished.
Right, but we wouldn't take the money out of the budget from the community services budget, right? Of, say, they had $50,000 in reserves to go towards this purchase of this lawnmower. That would stay there, and we would continue to try to build up on it?
Well, it depends on
In
what
the ideal
happens
world?
during the budget process. So
In
the
the ideal
purpose of
world?
this, yeah, so the purpose of that reserve is for a Fairway mower eventually, because it's going to be
Right.
hundreds of thousands of dollars. But oftentimes, those kind of things get cut from the budget. So some of these reserves are for savings, annually savings, so that we can eventually buy that Fairway mower. Some of them are unfinished projects that have to come out of the budget immediately when we do this year's budget.
I understand that part. I think we're struggling with knowing, like Graham has been really good over the last few years in our budget discussions about bringing forward how much he needs in total towards the purchase of the new fire truck. But with the new counselor on our thing, maybe it's time that we got a better understanding of exactly how much does a half-ton cost that, you know, Tyler might be asking for. How much is this lawnmower? Is it $500,000 or is it $1 million?
Councillor Lyons?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. Yeah, Brandy, I was just wondering with these various line items here, and it sounds like there's a mix of contributions to reserves and expenditures for this upcoming year. Could you possibly flag those items that we'd be looking to put into reserves?
When we do the budget, yes, it will all be identified as to what's what.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Knowles?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. Yeah, just in the same vein, just as everyone has suggested, if we have a list of those capital purchases, so we understand maybe how long that they've been saved up for, what's still remaining, and then when it does come time to budget, if there is excess budget that we're allocating towards something to get it completed faster, or if we have to make a partial trim or a full trim from that we have that information at hand, just so we understand what the large capital projects are and some of the timeframes involved, because I'm sure some of them will exceed council term limits as well. So that would be super useful. Thanks.
Well, that's all I have unless council has any more questions or comments, direction on what they do or don't want to see. Expectations.
Councillor Knowles, Councillor Martin, geez.
Thank you, Chair Stimson. Hey, Brandy, like, just, I mean, we picked on the lawnmower for the golf course here. Are we gonna see what kind of revenue the golf course generates? And, say other recreation or other investments that the town has in buildings and infrastructure in town. Are we gonna see, the revenue stream and then see what kind of budgets, obviously the lawnmower is gonna be a part of that, that's gonna be a cost that we're gonna need to incur at some point. Or can we see that somewhere? Is that typically what you do?
Yeah, so throughout the budget process, you're gonna get a lot of different reports and information and different ways. So, and if there's anything additional that you want, you just have to ask, because sometimes I hate to give too much information because I overload people and confuse them. On the other hand, I don't want to not give enough information, or I can look at financial documents and see something totally different than council does. So sometimes I have a hard time explaining it. So I want council to understand, and I want to make sure that I'm providing them enough information and in a way that they can understand it. So always feel free to make recommendations on what would help you do your job better, if I can present it in different ways.
Councillor Shine.
Thank you, Chair Stimson. My comment on that in regards to that would be, and I'm not picking on Tom, it's yours is an easy one to say. The campground, does it bring in $50,000? How much are we paying for electricity? How much are we paying to have, I don't know if we have to get things pumped, whatever. What is our profit on that? Can we
I actually have a report.
Simplify it for dummies?
Yep, no, I actually have a report to send out that.
Yeah.
It's not perfect because there are some lines out of place, but it'll give a better idea of that sort of thing.
Because when you're looking at services, then it needs to be so that we can understand it as a council in a terminology that we understand financially. You're the accountant, you know how you understand it. That may not be how we as councillors understand it. Kind of for dummies.
Yeah, no, so I actually do have a document ready to go that will help on that end.
Perfect.
Further to Councillor Martin's comments regarding proposed expenses and revenues, it's also important to keep in mind, like last year, for example, for the Hydro One leases that we had, a portion of that was phase one, and that revenue was realized last year. The remainder of those leases, that revenue will be realized this year. So when Brandy does the books and the budget, that certainly helps the bottom line. And then kind of to our next agenda item, looking at our fees and opportunities there, that there are some projected revenues that wouldn't maybe normally be here, but because of the Waasigan Transmission Project, we will realize increased revenue. So hopefully that will help when we do present the budget.
Thank you. Is that it, Brandy?
No,
Gord has a question.
Oh, sorry, Gord. Councillor
Sir,
Knowles.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay, yeah, I don't want to keep on with this, but so you're gonna do like a revenue versus expense, and like, so when we're generating revenue, and it seems like this is an easy one to pick on Tom, but with his portfolio there, say like when we're doing fees for hockey, for swimming, for golf, how do we know that we're competitive in the in the marketplace around us? Like, are we charging similar fees, or are we giving people a smoking deal, and now we got to spend $500,000 on a lawnmower here? So like, for peace of mind for me, I mean, and when it comes to budgeting, it would be nice to know that, well, this thing is generating pretty good revenue and we're on par with Fort Frances or surrounding communities. I don't know. for me, I'd like to know that, we're competitive, that we're in the ballpark with everybody else. Thank you.
Tom is actually working on his fees at the moment and doing a review of comparative municipalities. Normally, what's supposed to happen is annually every year, each department would review their fees as part of the budget process, and those fees would be revised. We've just had a major backlog, and they haven't been done for several years. So now they're getting done, but in the future, I'm hoping that they will get done annually. And even if, like, for example, Public Works, Tyler put in a 3% increase annually for the next few years. He's still going to look at them next year at budget time because maybe there are other changes, but at least it encompasses the 3% so that it's done automatically before any changes are required.
Thank
Mayor
you.
Ferguson?
Through the chair, when was the last time the recreation fees were adjusted?
I want to guess 2015.
Pardon me?
I want to guess 2015.
2015? 10 years, so it's going to be a big makeup for users.
Well, it depends on what council chooses, right? So,
So the fees bylaw for community services that under review do a couple things. One, a suggested and an amount increase across the board, and that'll be for council to decide which number you're most comfortable with. And to Councillor Martin's point, yes, we've done a comparison as best we can of the user rates in the region. We've stayed just in Northwestern Ontario.
So when will we see the proposed rates? Before budget or?
I believe they're ready to be reviewed now.
Next meeting then?
Yeah,
Okay,
I can
great.
send them out. I'm open to commentary.
Leo Young?
Just a further comment to it, I think we all need to remember as well that historically there's been a lot of political pressure on us to not raise fees. I think certainly that has changed, and I think that we're having good conversations regarding that. But when we talk about how many years it's been since a lot of these were increased, that was, back in the day, that was kind of a mandate for us to keep those fees low, right? So happy to see that we are trying to raise them.
Councillor Shine?
Thank you, Chair Stimson. Can we see those fees increases before we come to the next meeting? So that we can, if we have any questions to you or Brandy, that we're sending them ahead of time?
I'm just going to jump in there. You do see them in the agenda, right? So when we send out the agenda, the thought process is, right, is that's Thursday. You have till Monday, certainly an opportunity to go through it over the weekend, email questions, and we can either reply with that or come to the meeting with answers. So if you need that more ahead of time, then it becomes a timing issue. But generally, that's, you do get that information on Thursday.
Go ahead, Brandy.
I'm done unless anybody else has anything.
Any other questions? All right, we're gonna rumble right on down to Public Works. Director Yermaga.
What do we have first there, Councillor Stimson? I don't have my agenda. Doing fees bylaw first?
Oh, I guess so, yes. Right, that's it.
So not much to say on my end for this one. I guess I'm hoping third time might be the charm here. We did get a few questions finally sent over beforehand, so that was nice to see. I'll address the one I believe I got from Councillor Martin that was just asking about the equipment rates that we have in there. That's just internal billing. No, we don't rent equipment to anybody. From there, we received a number of questions from Councillor Lyons, and maybe we'll just pass it over to you to ask them, and we'll go back and forth and see what that spurs, or?
Sounds good. Thank you. So through the chair, I did submit a couple of questions, and the first one I had was with regards to the Public Works Custom Services, particularly the labor and equipment rates. Now, you provided similar service fees for adjacent communities, Fort Frances and Thunder Bay. Thunder Bay works on a cost recovery model, and Fort Frances has a 25% markup for non-residents. However, you're proposing a 70% markup on labor and 40% on equipment. So do those current markups for labor and equipment rates ensure cost recovery without overburdening residents?
Sure, so those costs are actually, the markups are all the historical ones. I haven't proposed any changes to those. I want to say in the 70% in terms of labor, that's covering your mercs, your benefits, all those types of things, but I might actually look at Brandy for a bit more comment on that one, just about outside of what I do with it.
Yeah, those numbers came from a prior council. So cost recovery would, for full-time, would probably be 35 to 40%.
Okay, so is that something that council should be considering, maybe aligning closer to that 40% markup as opposed to the 70% that's currently being charged, or
if
fees?
that's what council wants, yeah. Okay. So this was just recommended by a prior council, but it was put into the fees bylaw incorrectly. Okay. So we were just correcting that mistake.
Okay, thank you.
And also important to note that the 70% is typically only charged on the actual employees on the site, so that doesn't actually account for any of our time in the back, right? So any work that I put into the file never gets charged out, any of that. So the 70% also helps to offset those costs, or the costs of our engineering tech calling in locates or the planning, depending on what exactly the project entails.
Okay. I guess the second question I have is the proposed fee for water and sewer for unserviced lots. So what we have here is understanding that based on previous years, does the $50 per month fee, which covers both sewer and water, does that accurately account for infrastructure and operational costs associated with maintaining that service?
Sure. So what we see with the 50 per month, 25 water, 25 sewer, what we did there is we took approximately 30% of what a typical rate is, which is what we've seen in other municipalities go through. We didn't go through and try and figure out an exact number of service lots versus vacant lots and try and filter out, percentage-wise who's paying exactly what. We're kind of, taking the wheel and rolling with it for everybody else who's done the homework.
Okay, great. And how does, with implementing this fee, how does that increase compare to like an across-the-board property tax increase for residents?
Sure, so that's going to come down to the number of properties that we have available. I did some preliminary numbers here looking at our vacant lots. We're sitting about 267, I think I had on the spreadsheet right now. I do expect that to still come down like a fair bit. There's numbers on there that probably can't be serviced due to a variety of reasons. I tried to filter most of them out, but we have to get a little more in-depth on that. And then there's also a number of town-owned lots that are being surplus that we wouldn't see revenues for now, but potentially could in the future. But when I was doing some quick numbers, if we were looking at the 250 properties presumably paying the full fee for both connected services, in an annual basis, that would be about $150,000, which represents, I think, 2.5-ish% of an increase, 2 to 2.5% of an overall